Hello learners and viewers, welcome to this session. Today's topic is interrogating gender gaps in the economy. You all must have read already in the first year courses. There we have discussed various sectors and what are the gender inequalities existing in that various sector. This topic specifically part of the course MGSE 009. This course is part of the second year courses as part of the Masters in Gender and Development Studies. You all must have already read that gender inequality exists both developing and developed countries. This gender inequality is very visible when it comes to economy. Specifically, this gender inequality is very visible in the developing countries, specifically developing countries like Asian countries as well as South American countries. In these developing countries, the gender gaps between males and females in various indicators, like we used to assess the existing gender gap in education, earnings, how much male could earn in the same position, how much female could earn. For example, in agriculture, if the both male and female are employed in female, they might have earned less than male members. Like that in occupation, due to the existing patriarchy and socialization process, women were allowed to pursue certain occupations and they may not allowed to pursue various occupations. Then access to formal employment, access to managerial positions, access to productive inputs, political representation and bargaining power. These are the various indicators. Through these indicators, we already assess the existing gender gaps between male and female. Why do we, you all must be wondering, why do we need to assess the existing gender gap? That is the first question it comes to. We need to assess the existing gender gap, then only we could able to make required policies to bridge the existing gender gap. When we talk about the gender gap, this session specifically we need to discuss the existing gender gap specifically in the economic sectors. According to Dollar and Gatti, estimated the gender gaps in the schooling. Like when we talk about the economy, we must understand that we have to see how many percentage of the male, how many percentage of the female, they have an access to schooling, whether they have a skill. Since lack of proper formal education, lack of skill, most of the women, they were part of the informal sector. So it is important to know about the schooling, percentage of the male children and their access to schooling, as well as the percentage of the female children and their access to school. So according to Dollar and Gatti, in the 1999, they have estimated the gender gaps in the schooling. According to 1990 data, we need to see this series of data, then only whether over a period of time, whether these gender gaps have been bridged or it has widening or it is getting reduced. That's why we are taking the series of data. So according to 1990 data, in the poorest quintile of countries, only 5% of adult women had any secondary education and half of the level of men. Same thing in the wealthiest quintile, 51% of adult women had secondary education and 88% of the level of men. Even in the wealthiest quintile, more percentage of the women, they could have more percentage of the male, they could have a secondary education than the female. So gender gaps in employment and pay are reducing much faster in developing countries than in the industrial countries. In this statement, we could able to see that there is over a period of time, there is a reduction in the gender gaps. Specifically, we need to understand that what type of employment female are getting, equivalent in South Asia, Middle East and North Africa. Then gender inequality can be assessed. Specifically, we need to assess in the informal sector as well as household economy. Why the next question it comes to our mind is that there are notable percentage of the women, they are part of the informal economy. This study, the existing study, further proved women's contribution to subsistence work and family work, both in productive and reproductive works. We have elaborately studied about the subsistence work through the work of the Esther Boshroops in the African agricultural pattern. Most of the time, the women are unpaid in the family and women's work is not valued and counted. Women are also underrepresented in top positions. It's important to know that how much percentage of the women they have represented in the top position in various organization institutions. Because when we talk about the top position, the decisions about that particular organizations and institutions will be taken at the higher level. If the women are not represented adequately in the top positions in various organizations and institutions, the whatever decisions the particular organizations are taking, it may not represent the women's needs. Because when we talk about the socialization process, due to the existing socialization process in the society, male members, they are expected to do the various roles. Like that, female are also expected to perform various roles. Due to these role differentiations, their needs also differs. Whenever the government and institutions, whenever they make required policies and programs, it is significant to take significant to consider the existing roles performed by each genders. Accordingly, they have to formulate necessary policies to address their needs. If the women are not adequately represented in the decision making positions, whatever the decisions particular organizations or institutions they take, it may not represent women's needs. That is the main reason that it is important to have an adequate representation at the top level. The existing data also shows the percentage of the women employed in industrial sector. Women are part of the global labor force in the informal sector is in manufacturing. So, the women's percentage in manufacturing, specifically garment production, it is increasing. Still, why we are talking about the, why do we need to interrogate the gender gaps in the economy is that when we talk about these kind of sectors, garment production and manufacturing as well as informal sector, these are the various sectors has flourished export oriented. In those sectors, mostly large number of female were part of this sector. But they have to, when you look at the working condition of the females in this sector, these women, they are expected to work for long hours. They were not allowed to unionize, and most of these women who are working in these sectors like garment production and manufacturing sector as well as informal sector, they lack social security measures, and they most of the time in the garment sector, the women, they were paid in an piecemeal manner. Like if they could able to complete this much of work, and they will get the payment only the work they have completed. So whenever their status has not improved. Based on the Esther Boshroop study, they could formulate and theoretically they have introduced the WID approach, Women in Development approach. Based on the WID approach in 1975, most of the developing countries as well as developed countries, UN has asked them to formulate necessary policies to address the existing inequality. Thus, the WID approach, first it has emerged in 1970 and formally accepted by many countries. India also one of the signatories for the WID approach to formulate policies based on the WID approach in the first International Women's Conference in 1975. According to Cecilia Berlanga Alasso Robles, I quote, "The WID movement advocated for gender equality. However, its central and more popular discourse was based on economic efficiency arguments, also known as the gender efficiency approach, I unquote. This approach, the WID approach, was based on the idea that when women have an access to education, jobs, credits and assets, they can contribute substantially to society's economic growth and catalyze its development process. Thus, we need to see what is gender equality. Gender equality is having equal access to economic resources, equal levels of education and access to labor market. This gender equality does not necessarily lead to economic growth in every case, nor does it invariably benefit men and women equally. So, feminist economists, they critique the existing assumption on gender equality and raise the same questions to mainstream economists. So, here we understand that there is a significant term that is called the material altruism. This material altruism, what it refers to, that the ideology that stipulates that women are, by identifying them as mothers and wives, naturally the assumption is that they are having a nurturing and self-sacrificing roles. Naturally, thus, since they could able to they could able to produce children, doesn't mean that they have to take care of the children also. That is the main reason, since they are having this naturally having an nurturing roles, we assume that they have to nurture and self-sacrificing attitude they must have. This ideology as in mothers and wives again and again imposed on women that they are expected to not only take care of the children, elders. Thus, even though if they work in the economic sector, even if they do certain kinds of production activities, they are expect to do the reproduction activities also. Reproduction activities is not only they are expect to take care of the children, elders, take care of the entire household activities. They are supposed to cooking, all activities which they are supposed to do in the private spaces. But at the same time, when we talk about the male members, due to the existing socialization process, they are supposed to go out, earn, and they expect to take care of the entire family, as if the male are the responsible for the economic aspects of the entire family members. These kind of existing division between the female and male has affecting the opportunities for the female to work in the public spheres. So, the rationale behind these assumptions, like the existing assumption about the male and female, is contested as they fail to capture the existing structural discrimination. Along with these divisions, that whatever the expected roles performed by the male and female, that is the one divisions due to the existing socialization process. Along with this existing divisions, there are various divisions, the structural divisions. As far as India is concerned, we have various due to the locations. Some of them they located in the urban areas, some of them they located in the rural areas. Due to these various factors like caste, class and other factors, these discriminations affecting the female and their opportunities to work in the public sphere. So, the structural discrimination against women in the form of patriarchy, culture and social norms that continue to play a central role in social life, especially in developing and low income countries. That is the another thing. And this existing assumption and studies pointed out that gender equality can improve development outcomes for the women as well as children. Once we address the existing gender inequality and once we talk about the gender equality through various measures, once we bring the gender equality in the society, that will certainly benefit the both female and children, and as well as it will improve the development outcomes. Even when the women earn, they are likely to invest their resources in overall well-being of the children if they have more control over economic resources. This also proved by the various studies. Once the women started earning and once the women they became economically independent, they in turn they invest their existing resources in the well-being of the children. Thus, this entire earnings of the women will improve the well-being of the children and other members in the family. According to Cecilia Berlanga Alaso Robles, I quote, "This argument assumes that children's chances of the healthier life, higher life expectancy and improved quality of life are directly linked to gender equality, that is to women having access to economic resources and being able to choose where to allocate them." This was clearly pointed out by the many studies that if the women started earning, if the women if they are economically independent, they invest their resources for the well-being of the children. So, thus, women's empowerment is regarded as an enhancer of cross-generational social mobility and long-term social and economic returns, which is why it is labeled as smart economies. In another studies conducted in Guatemala and Brazil, this also showed a higher female share of the household budget is associated with better nutritional status of children as opposed to paternal income. Moreover, women's equality in education is related to the higher level of bargaining power within household. If the women could able to earn more, they have a more bargaining power. They could also equally contribute for taking decisions about children's education and children's nutrition and other development factors. They could able to bargain at the household level, and that's why if the women are economically independent, one could able to see that they have their greater association and participation in reproductive decisions. There is a direct link between education and having a number of children. There is a direct link between the education and the age of the marriage of the female members in the society. So, higher the education, there is a higher the bargaining power, and they could able to participate in the decisions making in the household as well as outside. Thus, the education and the economic independence directly related to the directly related with the women's exercising their agency to take various decisions. That decision, whatever decisions they take, it has a positive impact on the well-being of the children and other members in the society. So, patriarchy and socialization process bring implicit as well as explicit bias towards women and girl children, that we all know. Earlier also we have read in our course material. So, when the patriarchy and socialization process operates in a higher level, it brings the lack of bargaining power. And also when there is a when the patriarchy is more powerful in the private space, female also, they lack decision making process. For example, women are less likely to engage in high skilled productive work in most of the developing countries. For example, if the particular country, if they invest very less on women's education and very less on skilling of the women, then there will be the women, they are less likely to be part of the like economic activities. For example, there is a male preference in India. So, that has discriminate the women to take a decisions. How many children would they want to have? For example, even if they want to have one children, if they likely to produce only girl children, maybe family members, they forced to have a male children, that itself discriminate the female members, and if they get discriminated, that in turn makes the women unlikely. it unlikely to make the women to be part of the economic activities. Thus, again, Cecilia Berlango further states that, I quote, focusing too narrowly on women's agency in development process involves the risk of excluding men while endorsing and perpetuating opposing stereotypes of male egoism and irresponsibility and female altruism and self-sacrifice. I unquote. For example, for this, I would like to cite an example of conditional caste transfer programs or schemes for poverty reduction. Even Government of India also implementing various conditional caste transfer programs. Like when we talk about the material altruism, this example I would like to give that when the government transfer certain amount of cash to the female members, here we would like to do the extensive study how far that amount the female could able to utilize for their own well-being as well as well-being of the children. That is the one thing, whether even if the amount is transferred in the women's account, will they able to access the bank and other institutions to access those amount. These are the two questions. Most of the developing countries, most of the governments, they do implement the conditional caste transfer programs. Even though they implement the conditional caste transfer programs, most of the time the women, they may not be able to fully utilize those amount for not only for their own well-being of their children. That is the very significant points here to note it. In this case, even if the women, if the government, if they transfer the state certain amount in the name of the female, here how far the women has already empowered, will they able to exercise their own agency to utilize those amount for their well-being? That is the significant points here we need to note it out. These programs like a conditional cash transfer and other schemes and programs which are targeting women in developing countries have both positive and negative impacts on the life of the women. For example, when we talk about the conditional cash transfer, in some of the countries it's very successful because they could able to utilize those amount to improve the children and their educational aspects, as well as it has improved the nutritional aspects of the children, and it has played a significant role in reinforcing the existing gender roles. Since they are getting the certain percentage of the amount from the government, the family expect them to continue their existing gender roles instead of making them to get skilled and educated to be participate in the other economic activities. If they participate in the economic activities, if whatever the women they are doing economically, if the government calculate those activities as part of the existing GDP, certainly the particular country's GDP will improve. I hope you could able to understand the significance of interrogating the existing economic aspects in the society. Once we interrogate the existing aspects, accordingly the government could able to make necessary policies to address the existing gender equality that will bring the equality in the society, to make the women on par with the male members in the society. Thank you so much for listening this session. In another session, we will elaborately discuss about the other sectors like agriculture, education, how far the existing inequality playing the significant role in the lives of the women. Thank you.